Oh, yes. What's happening, everybody? It's Tuesday night. It's 10 o'clock Central Time. We've got a UFC card coming up this Saturday. UFC Las Vegas, headlined by Dvalishvili versus Peter Yan. So you guys all know what that means. It means that it's time for Just the Tip with me, your host, Uncle Weezy. We're going to break down all 13 of these fights from a stats and tape study perspective. I'm going to give you guys my track bets, and we're going to finish with Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week, which is on a 5-week roll right now. We're coming off a losing week last week. I was down 1.5 units. I made bad bets on I made a bad bet on Viviane Araujo, 1.5 units at plus 100. Amanda Hebas looked incredible, and Vivi just had absolutely nothing for her, so that was a really bad bet. I also had 1.5 units on the Jalen Turner money line. That was a very good bet at plus 190. I know because whenever I bet wrestlers who fought like Gamrot fought in that fight, I lose the bet because I get told fights are all about damage. But when I get the guy who does the damage, then I get told, no, it's the control time with absolutely no damage that matters there. So it wound up being a good bet. It could have definitely cashed, but it did not. Split decision loss for Jalen Turner. That would have made it a big winning week had I gotten the nod there, but it was too close. I had a unit total on Jeff Neal props. I had a half unit on a Jeff Neal knockout prop at plus 1,000. I had a half unit on Jeff Neal by decision at plus 1,000. He got Shavkat on skates there for a minute in the second round, I believe, but Shavkat's incredible. He got the job done with a wild choke there at the end of the third round. And also cashed on a 1.3 unit bet on Marc-Andre Barriault. And then we had a 3-unit bet on the fight doesn't go to decision for Brunson versus Duplessis. Down 1.5 units. Had a nice little prize picks play that cashed, though. And the ass shaving of the week, Cameron Simon got the job done. But the greasy 4-legger had the Viviane Araujo money line in there, and it had fight starts round 3 for Barriault versus Marquez, which didn't happen either. So, not the best week, but not the worst week either. If we get that Turner nod, it's a completely different story, and we're up a couple of units instead of down 1.5. And we still got to keep finding those plus money spots where we're getting plus EV looks and we're getting fighters that have a path to victory there. And it didn't work out this week, but hopefully it works out this week because I've already got 8.5 units in track bets thus far. And we went over a bunch of other bets today on probability earlier on the MMA Engine YouTube channel with my guy DFS by the numbers that are some spots that I'm probably going to be pulling the trigger on here shortly as well. So this looks to be a card where I'm going to have a lot of action. So I'm looking forward to sharing these breakdowns with you guys, finding ways to stack cash tickets like flapjacks, and figuring out how to find the underpriced lines that over the long term, if we continue to bet, will be plus EV profitable long-term UFC bettors. So join me. Come along for the ride here today on Just the Tip with Uncle Weezy, and we'll take you through all these fights. And by the way, have any of you pricks joined the Patreon? You see it scrolling there on the bottom of your screen, patreon.com/Uncle Weezy. If you don't join the Patreon, you're basically stealing from me. Well, that's not true, actually, but either way, I do appreciate the support that I get from you guys on the Patreon. $5 a month right now for the basic stats package, $20 a month for the prop template and the basic stats. Really good analytical tools. You guys get to see it every week on Stat Diggers. You get to see it every week on Just the Tip. And just by joining that Patreon and doing the $5 a month, you really help me out and help me be able to continue to provide this content for free to you guys on YouTube. So that's much appreciated. Please join that Patreon. And let's see what's going on with you guys in the chat right now. And let's see. We got first in the room is my guy Mark Schillingberg saying, "Oi, I just smashed the like. I'm going to try and stay up. My notification is on. If not, I'll catch you tomorrow, Weezy. Thank you so much for all the content and your vast knowledge. Looking like a fire card. I appreciate you, Mark. Thanks for hanging out with us. Even if you didn't make it tonight and had to sleep like a lot of responsible adults do at this hour, We appreciate that you're going to watch tomorrow, and hopefully we'll find some ways to make some money this week. We got Alan Hayes in the room saying, Weezy, them edibles are starting to kick in, primed and ready for your show. Oh, man, well, I'm going to try to give you the best show that I can today, Alan. Hopefully those edibles treat you really well, brother. We got Victor de Jesus in the room saying, Oi, yes, what's up, Weezy in chat? Let's shave ass this weekend. Let's get it, man. And Jenna Marie is in the room with the heart and the fire, and I appreciate you, Jenna Marie. This heart's on fire, too. This heart is on fire to shave some bookie ass and stack cash tickets like flapjacks this weekend, so let's get to it. We got my guy Daz Files in the room saying, Oi! And we got Mushroom in the room saying, Oh, yes, what's up, Uncle? Let's go. Let's get it, Mushroom. And we got Daz Files saying, interested in Cannetti Bautista under 2.5 in my parlay. Yeah, I don't mind that at all. It's probably a very juiced line, but I think that we talked about that one today. I feel like the Cannetti Bautista fight, most of these guys have never finished a fight that has been between the 1.5 round mark and the end of the fight, if I'm not mistaken. Let me get that number for you. There it is. So they have a combined 11 of 16 fights that have went under 1.5, but it's actually the exact same number of fights that have not went to decision. So every Bautista and Cannetti fight that has finished inside the distance at the UFC level has finished under 1.5 rounds. So you might want to, Daz Files, bet that under 1.5 instead of the under 2.5. I understand that the under 2.5 makes you feel a lot safer. But neither one of those guys has ever finished a fight at the UFC level after 7.5 minutes. That's interesting. We got Cole Stein in the room saying, Oi, Uncle Weezy, ass shavings have been hot recently. Thanks, you got it, man. Yeah, we love it when we hit those most confident picks, and I got a good one for you this week. We got Martin Durmov is in the room saying, Hey, Weezy, haven't been able to catch a live stream for a while, but I've been meaning to tell you the happiest and saddest betting story ever. 2 weeks ago, I was watching the live odds during the Jazz Davicius Fernandez fight. After round 2, where Jazz had 10-9 and 10-8 this girl and was dominating, Bovada switched the odds on accident in between rounds. Jazz Davicius went from minus 1,400 to plus 800. Oh, my God, man. At this point, I have about $10,000 worth of placed bets and only have $50 available to bet. Immediately hit the plus 800 on Jazz and cash the 400 profit. Imagine if I didn't have those other bets placed. Oh, my God, that's amazing. In 2 seconds, Jazz went from plus 800 to minus 5,000. Wow. What a catch, dude. That's absolutely huge, man. What a great catch there, Martin. Good work, dude. Let's see. We've got Sean V is in the room. What's up, Sean? Saying, what's up to Mushroom? We got Matthew Chalk saying, Oi, time to win back the cash. Grass lost me. Oh, Grasso, yeah, man. Grasso surprised some people, that's for sure. Let's see. We got Nigel Lee saying won 12 out of 13 parlays last weekend, and I'm going to smack him again this weekend. Let's get it, man. Very good job. We got the Cuban Assassin in the room saying, what it do, Weezy? Let's get that cheese. I wonder how the Dagestan fighters will do with no Khabib in camp. Yeah, well, we were going to see Abubakar Nurmagomedov, but he's ill, so he had to pull out of the Carlston Harris fight. And then we've also got Saeed Nurmagomedov, but Saeed I don't think trains with Khabib. He's definitely more of a striker too. So I think that he's out of the Dag fighter camp, and I don't think Khabib was ever affiliated with that camp. And I know that they're kind of like cousins, but at the same time, I don't know how much Khabib has ever had to do with Saeed's training. But maybe I'm wrong about that. But either way, that's a very interesting fight that we're going to be breaking down. And Nigel Lee saying a little two-teamer, nothing crazy. Okay. We got Six Side Worldwide saying, Oi, Uncle everyone, what's up? Six Side Worldwide. Good to see you in here. Jeff Truesdale saying, anyone know the reason for the Bruno Silva layoff? I do not know the reason for it. But we'll probably find out if you watch Santino and Brandon Olivas' podcast on Santino DeFranco's YouTube channel, because Bruno Silva trains over there with Cejudo over at Fight Ready. Those guys would know why Bruno took the time off. Bruno hasn't been a particularly active mixed martial artist over his career. We've got DFS by the numbers saying, what's up, Weezy? What's up, Brady? We did some content yesterday on Stat Diggers. We did some content for you guys today on the MMA Engine YouTube channel doing probability. Brady went out to Vegas, had a winning night, got to watch the fights, got to see UFC 285 live, and then spent about 12 hours on Spirit Airlines trying to get back home, and then did Stat Diggers after basically waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning on Sunday or on Monday, and then doing that entire crazy flight home with like 3 stops and delays and all this shit. So one of the hardest working men in the business right there, my guy Brady. And we got the Weasel in the room saying, "Ni hao, Weezy." I appreciate you, Weasel. Ni hao, right back at you, brother. I hope that you enjoy the show. And we've got Ice Viking in the room saying these lines move so quick these days. Dude, yeah. This is getting to be a sharper market here. There's a lot of people really paying attention to the UFC, and these lines are getting a lot sharper, but they're also getting a lot more juiced really quickly. And eventually some of these underdogs are going to start pulling off some wins here. And the people who have the balls to bet them are going to be cashing big. We got Justin J in the house saying, "Oi, howdy, Weezy in chat." What's up, Justin J? Exodia is saying, "Is that the real Weasel?" I don't know. If it is the real Weasel, I'm very, very honored. But I don't know if he knows about my little small channel here in my little corner of the internet. But if that was the real Weasel, that would be super cool. We got the Golden Octagon in the room saying, "Let's stack them this week, boy. Vivi hurt me feeling last weekend." Yeah, me too, man. She's still a dog for about 6 minutes, though. Yeah, and you can't really take away anything from what Amanda Ribas did in there. She was fantastic, and she's been on a roll lately. Great performance against Jandiroba. Great performance against Chukagian, which she didn't get the nod in, and now a great performance 2 in a row at 125 against Viviane Araújo, who's a very good fighter in that division. So this is fantastic stuff that she's been on a roll. Amanda Ribas, really looking forward to seeing what's next for her. She's cost me some money, and I've bet against her, and she keeps proving me wrong, and she did it again on Saturday. Big ups, Amanda Ribas. That was a hell of a performance. And we got the Black Militant is in the room saying, "Uncle Weezy." What's up, Black Militant? Thanks for hanging out with us here. We got the Golden Octagon saying, "Y'all hit that thumbs up." We got DFS by the numbers saying, "Get some help, Spirit Airlines." Yeah, man. He definitely spent entirely too long on those planes and waiting for those planes. But God bless the kid. He still made it to Stat Diggers and still put on a great show. We got Exodia in the room saying, "Surely a big underdog card has to be coming. Fave's been killing it this year." I'm waiting for it to happen because I've been on a lot of these underdogs. And some of them have been good bets, and some of them have just been bad bets. I mean, the 1 unit on Lena Landsberg, very bad bet, but eventually some of these underdogs are going to start coming through. Otherwise, Vegas is going to go broke on these parlays, man, because everybody's parlaying everything up, and it's all working. We got Jono in the room saying, "Can't wait for the fights. Let's go, Weezy." What's up, Jono? Thanks for hanging out. We got Ice Viking saying, "Mushroom Bro, loving the content these days. I've never used one of these casino kiosks before. Keep it up, man." Yeah, dude, Mushroom's doing some fantastic content on his channel, which is brand new. Go over there and subscribe to it if you haven't already. And he's doing shows late Thursday night. Justin Villegas in the room saying, "Much love to you, Weezy. Thank you for the time you put in with the stats." I appreciate you, Justin. It's a lot of hard work, but it really helps us all do a little bit better against these bookies. We got Jono saying, "Toughness of Song killed my parlays." Yeah, man, he was tough. And not only that, I'm sure a lot of the Gary parlay bettors had their hearts stopped when Song dropped them, because Song's got a ton of power, man. But big ups on Gary for being able to recover from that shot and continue looking fantastic down the stretch. The kid's a great prospect. We got, oh, damn, the Black Militant is Jabril. It's Jabril Patterson. Just changed my YouTube name, Uncle Weezy. What's up, Jabril? It's good to see you back in here, my man. Jabril is an undefeated professional mixed martial artist who's taken some time off and is not sure if he's going to come back to it or not. But I don't think I've seen you yet in the cage, man. Let me bring up that name on Tapology. JP. Joe Patterson, still 4-0, still undefeated out of the great state of New York, man. Yeah, dude. Jabril, good to have you back in here, brother. It's been a while, man. Good to see you, dude. And we got Alan Hayes saying, Brady, you've been cashing. Why are you flying Spirit? Because flying is expensive. We got Black Militant saying, what's up, man? Going to try to get back in the cage in November. Damn, that's great, dude. It's good to see you coming back, man. 4-0, why not, man? You got to see how far you can take that. And I know that you've done very well up to this point. So good to see you getting back in there. And hopefully we'll be rooting you on when you get back in there in November, my man. Good to see you. We got Metalinga saying, oh, we've got DJ saying, oi, what's up, Weezy? Let's get that cash back from all the Valentina parlays we all lost last week. Yeah, I didn't parlay her, but Viviani Araujo cost me enough money. We got Buffo on the beat saying, Weezy, curious, what is your favorite kind of muffin is? A banana nut, blueberry, chocolate chip? Definitely the blueberry muffin, my favorite muffin of all time. I'm a huge fan of blueberries. And we got Black Militant with that praying motion with the hands there. All right, you guys. We got Mushroom saying, what's up to Jabril? Let's get into it. We got 13 fights to break down. I've got about 20 pages of notes to go on here. And we're going to start with the curtain jerker today, which is going to be Bruno Gustavo da Silva at -200, squaring off against Tyson Nam, +170. The fight doesn't go to decision, sitting up at -150. Let me share my screen with you guys and get these stats on the screen. And there we go. Fantastic. And these are the stats that are available on my Patreon for $5 a month. These distance striking stats going forward after March will be bumped up to $10 a month, but it's definitely worth it. These distance striking numbers are so much more predictive than just the significant striking numbers, because it really does tell you where the majority of fights take place and how people really do perform in those distance striking situations. It gives you a much deeper look, and it's a much more useful way to apply the statistics. So check that out on my Patreon. Definitely looking to get some more people on there. But yeah, so we've got Bruno Silva, who's been on a layoff. We haven't seen Bruno Silva since the JP Bays fight where he shaved his ass. That fight took place May 22nd, that was a Victor Rodriguez fight. I'm sorry. It was 2 months after the JP Bays fight. So we fought, late 2020, early 2021, and then 2 months later again in 2021. And now we haven't seen him in almost 22 months. So definitely a long way off here. But let's get these matchup stats back up on the screen. So let's start talking about Tyson Nam here. And let me bring that in. Tyson's a cagey veteran of the sport. He's 39 years old, and he's had a 17-year career that has spanned 34 pro fights with a 21-12-1 record. He's got 13 wins coming by way of KO and 1 win by way of submission. Tyson's got a mediocre 7 wins, 9 losses, and 1 draw record in his 17 decisions. And he's been durable, as he's only been finished 3 times in 34 professional fights. And the last time Tyson was finished was back in 2013, 10 years ago, by one Marlon Magic Moraes on the regional scene. Tyson is a moment-winning KO artist who relies on landing the big shot. He's got a negative 2.24 distance striking differential, but he has a nice 1.71% knockdowns per total significant strikes landed. And those are the total distance strikes landed that I've used there. So he's landing a knockdown on 1.7% of the distance strikes that he's landing. And he's got a 65% distance striking defense. So he doesn't lose moments at distance, as he's never been knocked down. And he's landed 3 knockdowns in 6 UFC fights. And all 3 of his UFC wins have come by way of KO. And so he's shown that the ability to find that big shot at this level is he's finished Jerome Rivera, Zaruk Adashev, and Odi Osborne. All three of his UFC fights that went to decision were losses, though. He had a split decision loss to Matt Danger Schnell. He had a unanimous decision loss to Kai Kara France and another unanimous decision loss to Sergio Pettis. So he's faced some good level of competition there, especially Kai Kara France, but Pettis and Schnell, a couple of veterans of the division as well. Tyson is 0 of 4 on his UFC takedown attempts, but he's also 100% on his takedown defense on 4 attempts against. So he keeps his fights at distance striking range over 95% of his UFC cage time. And in the 5% of the time that he does spend in clinch or ground positions, Tyson's winning 87% of those positions, but it's a small, section of what he's actually doing in the cage. At this point in his career, Tyson's a low volume striker with a ton of power and a puncher's chance. He can lose minutes at range, get out volumed, and land one big counter that changes the trajectory of the fight and gets Tyson the win. I don't see Tyson changing up his game at the age of 39, so that's what I expect to see from him on Saturday. And it also should be noted that Tyson had a 1.5-year layoff prior to the Ode Osborne fight due to him rehabbing from a fully torn ACL. So that's a little bit of a red flag there. But he did show after coming back against Ode Osborne that the knee looked good. Now, Bruno Silva is almost 33 years old, and he's got a 20-fight pro career with a 12-5 and 2 draws and 1 no contest record. He's finished 9 of his 12 wins inside the distance, 3 by submission, 5 by knockout, and he's finished both of his UFC wins thus far, both knockouts over JP Bays and Victor Rodriguez. Bruno is 4-3-2 in his career in decisions, but in the UFC, he's 0-2 thus far, losing unanimous decisions to Tagir Ulanbekov and David Dvorak, both very good fighters. Bruno's been a bit of a minute loser thus far in the UFC at striking range, as he's got a negative 0.52 distance striking differential while throwing 2.55 less distance strike attempts per minute at distance than his opponents does. So he throws and lands less than his opponents do. But he makes up for that with his power. Bruno's landed 4 knockdowns thus far in the UFC, and that comes out to 3.5% of the distance strikes that he's landing are resulting in a knockout. Or a knockdown, I should say. So he's got a ton of power. And he's also a very good wrestler and grappler, and he definitely uses that in his fights. He's attempted 32 takedowns in his 52 minutes in the UFC cage, so he definitely commits to the wrestling. And in his fights, he's getting 2.89 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he's out-controlling his opponents 28.4% to 12.9%, and he's winning almost 70% of the control time positions he's been in, despite being in there against solid grapplers like JP Bays and Tagir Ulanbekov. So far, Bruno has fared well against guys like Tagir and Dvorak, as both of those fights were 29-28 and competitive stats-wise. And he's crushed the lower-level guys like you would expect him to. This is a fight against a one-dimensional, low-volume, high-power striker. So Bruno might take the path of least resistance and try to grapple here to try to take Tyson out of his comfort zone, as Bruno trains at Fight Ready with Henry Cejudo. So you got to believe that Bruno, if he's a little bit worried about the counter striking of Tyson Nam, that he's got the ability not only to go to that wrestling, but the ability to push that pace for a very long time and do it in a way that's going to take Tyson out of what he does best. So in summary, Tyson Nam is 3 inches taller. He's got a 3-inch reach advantage over Bruno Silva, and he's got 14 more professional fights and 140 more minutes in the pro cage. And he's also got a slight UFC experience edge. Tyson's a low-volume counter striker with big power in his right hand, and if it lands, Bruno will be in big trouble. Now, Tyson has faced a better level of competition at the UFC level, but Bruno is 6 years younger. He's going to be the better wrestler and submission grappler here, and he's also been a better minute winner at range in comparison to Tyson. And Bruno's low leg kicks could be a big problem for a boxer who's heavy on his lead leg like Nam is. So I got to go with Bruno Silva here, as he's got more paths to victory with his volume, his wrestling, and his clinch game, and his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt level submission game as well. This guy can really cage wrestle. That's something that the guys at Fight Ready concentrate on a lot, and they're very proficient in winning those minutes on the cage, using those spots to defend takedowns well and get takedowns of their own and get to dominant positions. So I think that Bruno's going to push a grappling heavy pace that will test Nam's gas tank and his 100% takedown defense thus far in the UFC. So that's going to really be tested here, because Tyson does have 100% takedown defense, but he's only faced 4 takedown attempts in 54 minutes. And he's not exactly facing guys that are like monster wrestlers in Kai Kara France, Zaruk Adashev, Jerome Rivera, Matt Schnell, Odie Osborne. These are not, monster wrestlers. So outside of Nam landing a big counter right hand, I do see Silva having him covered everywhere. And I'm picking Bruno Silva to win this fight by decision due to the durability of Tyson Nam. All right. And then the next fight that we're going to talk about is going to be Victor Hendry going up against Tony Gravely. And right now, Gravely is the underdog at plus 119. Victor Henry minus 139 is the favorite. And the fight doesn't go to decision at plus money at plus 140. All the lines here, you guys, are courtesy of betonline.ag. So one of my favorite books. They always get these lines out early. They're almost always first to market with their time props and their over-unders. So I always put the Bet Online lines here for you guys on the show. So just know that. And yeah, so we're going to talk about Gravely versus Hendry here. Get those stats up. And let's first start talking about Victor Hendry here, as he's an ultra veteran of the sport with a beautiful head of hair on him. I mean, the kid's got great hair. He comes from a catch wrestling base, and he has a high volume striking style on the feet. So, yeah, he's been training with Josh Barnett at UWF ever since I've seen the tape on him. So, Victor's 35 years old. He's got 28 professional fights in 315 minutes in the pro cage. He's got a 22-6 pro record. He's fought all over the world, and he's faced some really high-level regional scene competition over his 12-plus years in the sport. Victor has 13 finishes, 7 by submission, 6 by knockout, so he's a well-rounded fighter who's 8-6 in his career in decisions. In Victor's 2 UFC fights, in 30 minutes in the UFC cage, he's throwing an insane 18.86 distance strike attempts per minute that is spent at distance, and he's 48% accurate. He's got a positive 1.99 distance striking differential, landing 9.07 distance strikes per minute. And about almost 79% of his UFC cage time has been spent at distance. So Vic really pushes a pace when he's at striking range that can be really hard to deal with if you aren't durable, defensively sound, and have excellent conditioning. Victor can be wrestled, though, as evidenced by the 2 takedowns and the 4.5 minutes of control time he gave up against Raphael Assuncao. His second to last regional scene fight, the rematch against stud prospect Denis Lavrentev, we saw Vic get taken down and controlled for large portions of the fight. And against Kanahara in the first round in Risen, we also saw him get taken down and controlled for the rest of the round. Vic has shown that he's game and is a UFC-level fighter, fighting Barcelos and Assuncao and having good fights with both of them. And then Gravely has been an extremely active fighter as a professional. He's got 30 pro fights, and that's coming in only a 7-year pro career. And he's got a 22-8 pro record, with 12 of those 22 wins coming inside the distance, 3 submissions, 9 knockouts. Tony's done a great job of using his wrestling to win minutes, as evidenced by his 10-2 record in decisions in his career. Tony doesn't do his best work on the feet. He's not a minute winner there, especially in comparison to a fighter who fights with the style Victor Henry does. Tony has got a negative 2.68 distance strike per minute differential, and he only has 52% distance striking defense, which isn't good. However, Tony has landed 4 knockdowns in his 7 UFC fights, landing a knockdown on 3.08% of the strikes that he lands at distance. That power on the feet, combined with the threat of the takedown, is what makes him a very dangerous fighter. Tony has attempted 64 takedowns in his 7 UFC fights, and he's completed 30 of them. So even though he's just spamming takedown attempts, 64 of them in 72 minutes in the UFC cage, but he's getting them at almost a 50% clip, which is very good. 47% takedown accuracy, and he's averaging 6.19 takedowns per 15 minutes. Tony has only shown 50% takedown defense thus far, so he is vulnerable to losing minutes in the grappling exchanges against active wrestlers. 63% of Tony's UFC cage time has been spent in control time positions, and Tony's winning 75% of those positions. So this is where Tony does his best minute winning, and Tony's moment winning potential comes from the power that he has in his hands. So in summary, Victor Henry is 2 inches taller. He's a switch stance fighter. Vic has never been finished in his pro career, which spans 28 fights, while Gravely has been finished in 6 of his 8 pro losses. So Victor is the far more durable fighter here. Victor throws way more volume, and he's the better minute winner on the feet at range due to the sheer volume and the pace that he brings. Vic also has the conditioning advantage due to the pace he pushes, and we've seen Tony slow down later in fights due to how much wrestling he usually does. Vic has also fought the much better level of competition in the small sample size of fights he's had thus far at the UFC level. Tony Gravely is 4 years younger. He's got a 1-inch reach advantage over Victor, and he's got the overall and the UFC experience advantages, even though he's fought for 5 less years than Victor has. Tony has way more power on the feet, and he has the superior wrestling and minute-winning abilities in the grappling exchanges. I don't know who's going to win this fight, as there's no way to know which Victor Henry is going to show up. The difference in his 2 UFC performances against Barcelos and Assuncao were night and day. So trying to predict which version of Vic shows up is kind of pointless to me. But I'm going to pick Gravely to win by decision because he's younger, because he has more power on the feet, and because he's the better wrestler. But if this fight stays on the feet most of the time, Vic should probably win on volume and accuracy. But the thing is that Gravely's fights over that big sample size of 7 fights, 72 minutes in the UFC cage, they're spending almost 2/3 of it in grappling positions here. And Tony is such a accurate wrestler and such a good minute winner there that I think he's going to be able to edge out Victor Henry here by decision. So I forgot to bring this up. We got Jabril Patterson's page up here. Look at that spotless 4-0 record on our guy Jabril. But let's make picks on this card. I've been doing this for you guys so you know who I'm picking here. And I'm picking Bruno Silva to win by decision in the first fight. And here I'm going to be picking Tony Gravely to win by decision over the beautiful head of hair of La Mangosta, Victor Henry. So, yeah, that's the first 2 picks that we're going to go with here. And the next fight that we're going to talk about is Ariane Lipski squaring off against JJ Aldrich. And right now, this is a juiced line. Juiced to the tits, everybody. JJ Aldrich, the favorite, -400. The comeback on the underdog, Ariane Lipski, +300. Fight doesn't go to decision at +155. Oh, that's a delicious beer. We got the Hop Butcher Meet the Simcoes here. And this is a Simcoe hopped India Pale Ale with tasting notes of an orange medley, ripe berry, and fresh tropical. Just an absolutely delightful beverage to sip on while we break down these fights. And if we break down these fights correctly, we're not just sipping on beautiful beer tonight. We'll be sipping on bookie tears on Saturday, ladies and gentlemen. So let's go. Let's keep putting in this work here. Lipski versus Aldrich. Let's first start talking about Ariane Lipski. Ariane is a 29-year-old orthodox Muay Thai striker with a ton of power in her hands. She's got 22 pro fights, a mediocre 14-8 pro record. 9 of those 14 wins coming inside the distance, though, with 3 submissions and 6 knockouts. She's got a 3-5 record in the UFC with 1 finish win, and she's been finished in 3 of her 5 UFC losses. And all of those came by way of knockout. Ariane does good work at range. She's got a positive 0.31 distance striking differential, and she throws 4.21 more distance strike attempts per minute at distance than her opponents do. So she outlands and outvolumes her opponents on the feet. Also, Ariane has 3 UFC knockdowns in her 8 UFC fights, so she can win minutes and moments when she's on the feet. Ariane prefers to keep fights standing, but hasn't done a good job of doing that, as her fights take place in control time positions about 53% of her UFC cage time, and she's winning about 42% of those control time positions, which actually makes her grappling efficiency pretty good, despite the fact that she's only showing 55.5% takedown defense on 18 attempts in her 8 UFC fights. Ariane has a mediocre strength of schedule thus far, and her 3 UFC wins are over opponents with a combined 3-5 UFC record. Mandy Bohm, Luana Carolina by a weird knee bar, and Isabella Dupadua are the wins on Ariane Lipski's UFC resume. When it goes to JJ Aldrich, she's a 30-year-old flyweight. She's got 11 UFC fights, over 150 minutes in the UFC cage. She's got an impressive 7-4 UFC record. All 7 of those wins coming by way of decision, and JJ has a 9-2 career record in decisions overall. She's a southpaw striker with low volume, high efficiency style. She gets outlanded at negative 0.54, and she gets outvolumed by 3.49 distance strikes per minute. But she also has some nice accuracy at 42%, and she's got great distance striking defense at 65%. She spends almost 75% of her UFC cage time at distance and has never landed or absorbed a knockdown in the UFC. JJ's been an efficient grappler thus far. She gets 0.9 takedowns per 15 minutes, and she allows 0.7. She outcontrols her opponents 16.6% to 9.1%, and she's winning just under 65% of the control time positions that she's been in. Other than her win against Jillian Robertson, her wins aren't what I would call impressive. Vanessa Demopoulos, who's a 115-pound fighter, not a 125er. So the win over Demopoulos was on short notice for Demopoulos up a weight class. So, that's not a great win. Courtney Casey, Lauren Princess Tiger Mueller is a win. Pauliana Viana down at 115. Danielle Taylor down at 115. And Chan Mi John. Those are the wins. So we got to be a little bit careful with this line at minus 400. And the only ones with winning UFC records are Vanessa Demopoulos and Jillian Robertson on that resume there. JJ's getting a lot of credit for her performance against Blanchfield, but outside of that, she hasn't flashed any greatness yet that would justify this line, even against an opponent like Lipski. So in summary, Ariane Lipski's 1 year younger. She's an inch taller than JJ. She's got 6 more pro fights and almost 1 more year as a pro fighter. Ariane is the much more powerful striker and potent finisher. JJ Aldrich, though, is a southpaw. She's got the UFC experience advantage with 3 more fights and 70 more minutes in the UFC cage. JJ is definitely the more efficient minute winner in the grappling exchanges, as she gets more takedowns and has the better takedown defense. JJ's also fought and beaten the better brand of UFC competition in comparison to Lipski. So there are paths to victory, though, for Ariane. She can land a big shot on the feet, or if the fight mostly stays standing, all Ariane has to do is outvolume Aldrich, similar to what Mazo did, in order to be busier and potentially land the more damaging blows. JJ should win this fight by decision, but this line is bonkers. Maybe a Lipski finish-only prop might be a decent look here, or maybe a small shot on Lipski's money line at plus 325 or better if this line keeps moving. But I do think that the best bet for this fight is just to take JJ Aldrich by decision. Now, yes, Ariane has been finished in 3 of 5 losses. She lost by knockout to Cachoeira, who's got a ton of power. She lost by knockout to Montana De La Rosa on the ground via ground and pound. And she also lost to Shevchenko via ground and pound. But JJ Aldrich is not dominating control time positions, and most of her fights actually stay standing about 75% of the time. So I think that JJ Aldrich, who has 7 wins at the UFC level but has never finished any of those wins, is probably going to win this fight by decision. And I think it's the best way to get this line on Aldrich from minus 400 right now to something a lot more reasonable, which is closer to even money, maybe around minus 105, minus 110 for JJ Aldrich by decision here. But yes, that is going to be the official pick. It's going to be JJ Aldrich using her efficiency, mixing in the grappling, and using her good striking defense to win the minutes here over 3 rounds and get a win over the queen of violence, Ariane Lipski. All right. The next fight that we are going to talk about, Mario Bautista, minus 950, going up against the Social Security, soon will be collecting it, Guido Cannetti, plus 650. Fight doesn't go to decision, juice to the tits at minus 550. Very, very interesting fight, but a very unbettable line that we have here. So let's get these stats up on the screen. And then we can talk about, oh, wait a second. I see we've got a couple of donations here. Let me get it here real quick. Abraham Khan, yo, Unc, what are my 2 favorite parlay pieces? Well, it's funny you should ask that right now, Abraham, because I actually have a 2-leg moneyline parlay, which I was going to give out at the end of the show, but since you gave me money, $1.99, I'm going to give it to you right now. My 2 favorite parlay pieces on this card, the money lines of Bruno Gustavo da Silva and Karl Williams. That parlay came out earlier today at 1 unit at plus 125 on DraftKings Sportsbook, and I think at a plus money, that's a very hard one to pass up. My guy Ice Viking is saying Lipski is pretty bad. Yeah, I tend to agree with you in the cage. She is a baddie, though. And then we've got Mushroom MMA saying the queen of pacifism. And then ring a ding ding. My guy Silky B with the $10 donation, keeping the lights on here in Uncle Weezy's studio. Appreciate you so much, Silky B. Thank you so much for the donation. And this is what makes it all worthwhile when you guys are helping me keep the lights on here in the studio. So much obliged, you guys. But let's get back to business here and talk about this Bautista Cannetti fight. So let's first start talking about Bautista. Before we do, no, a little bit more. We're working hard here, so we got to stay hydrated. Bautista is only 29 years old. He's a bantamweight with great size for the division at 5'9" with a 69-inch reach. He's a switch stance fighter who trains at the MMA lab, got an impressive 11-2 pro record, and almost 100 minutes in the pro cage, with 7 of those 13 fights being in the UFC and over half of his pro cage time taking place in the UFC. So Mario has fought the majority of his career at the highest level, and he's still only 29 years old. Mario's a finisher. He's got 8 of his 11 pro wins coming inside the distance, 5 submissions, 3 knockouts, and he's 3-0 in his pro career in decisions. So he can finish fights with submissions and knockouts, and he's demonstrated the ability to be able to win minutes as well. At distance, Bautista throws a ton of volume. He's offering 14 distance strike attempts per minute at distance and landing 43% and showing 59% distance striking defense. He's got a positive 1.25 distance striking differential and he's landed 1 knockdown in 7 UFC fights. Mario's been very efficient in his grappling exchanges. He's gotten 8 of his 12 takedown attempts for 2.25 takedowns per 15 minutes and 1.13 submission attempts per 15 minutes. Mario has attempted 13 takedowns, and his opponents have attempted 15 against Mario. And Mario still outcontrols his opponents at a 2.3 to 1 ratio. So he's got 23.7% control time for and 10.3% control time against. It's been hard to find places to win minutes against Mario, but he's been dropped twice in the UFC, and he's been finished in both of his UFC losses, one to Corey Sandhagen, which is understandable, and the other one to Trevin Jones, which is a little bit harder to swallow, especially when you're laying minus 950 on somebody. But and those were the fights that he was dropped in, were those with the Sandhagen and the Jones fights. Mario's an excellent prospect who can find multiple paths to victory, but he has shown the ability to lose moments and be finished. So laying minus 900, minus 950, minus 1,000 on that archetype of fighter is just unacceptable to me. Guido Cannetti, 43 years old, you guys. He's got a mediocre 10-6 pro record, and he's only fought 16 times in his 15-year pro career. So there aren't many miles on the tires for this guy, despite his age. Guido has finished 8 of his 10 pro wins inside the distance, 4 knockouts and 4 submissions, and he has a 2-1 pro record in his decisions. Guido is low volume at distance, but he's efficient. He's got a positive 0.96 distance striking differential with 49% accuracy and 60% distance striking defense. He's landed 0 knockdowns, and he's absorbed 3 knockdowns, so that's not good. Guido is winning 56% of the control time positions he's been in, and his fights are there about 42% of the time. Guido's a front-loaded fighter. He comes out swinging bombs, throwing heavy low leg kicks. He brings a war and a killer-be-killed style, and he'll throw the kitchen sink at you until someone lands something big. Guido's faced a solid level of competition thus far in the UFC, but his wins are over guys with a combined 7-11 UFC record. Hugo Vianer, Rivas from Chile, Chris Montino, and then Randy Costa. So in summary, Mario is over 13 years younger than Guido. He's 3 inches taller, and he's got a 1-inch reach advantage, and he's a switch stance fighter versus a southpaw. So, it's something that is a nice statistical edge in the sample size of switch versus southpaw. You've got, that's a statistical significant edge to the switch stance fighter there. He's the better minute and moment winner on the feet, and he's got the more efficient grappling and wrestling and submission grappling games. Bautista has the better wins. Cannetti's been the better finisher and has a little more pro and UFC experience in comparison to Bautista. The line is minus 900 on Bautista's money line for a reason, but you need to be careful. Bautista's been finished in both of his pro losses, and he's been dropped in both of his losses. But that being said, got to go with Bautista to win this fight, and I'm picking him to win it by second-round sub. I definitely love Mario Bautista's submission game, and he locks those things up and does a very good job. You could see that in his career, 45% of those 11 wins are coming by way of sub, so 5 career wins by submission for Mario Bautista, and I think that he's going to get it done via submission here, and I'm going to call it in round number 2. All right. Next fight is going to be Sedriques SD Dumas at minus 180 going up against the big Yins, Josh Fremd at plus 155. And we got the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 350 for this fight. So definitely a juiced up violence prop here as people are expecting this fight to finish inside the distance. And what I'm expecting from this fight is absolutely fireworks. I can't wait for this fight. I think might be one of the fights that I'm looking forward to most on this card because these are both really young, really exciting prospects here. So let's start talking about Sedriques Dumas or SD Dumas, and I'm calling him because it's SD. You got to call him Special Delivery Dumas. So he will be referred to from here on out on Uncle Weezy's YouTube channel as Special Delivery Dumas. And Special Delivery is a 27-year-old prospect who's fairly new to the sport of MMA. He's only had a 2.5-year pro career where he's 7-0 with 6 wins coming inside the distance. He's got 4 knockouts and he's got 2 submissions. Special Delivery has also had an extensive amateur career, though, that's lasted about 2.5 years, where he went 9-1 with 6 finishes in that. SD has a fantastic frame for the middleweight division. He's 6'2". He's got a 79-inch reach, which is huge, and he uses his size and his length well, especially at striking range, where he uses his long legs to kick to keep his opponents at range and stay safe defensively. His only loss as a pro or amateur came to Miles Lee, who's a promising young prospect himself who just fought for the CFFC middleweight title, and he lost in the 4th round to Donovan Beard in that fight. So that's the only guy to beat Dumas as a pro or an amateur, and it's a legitimate professional fighter right now in Miles Lee. SD hasn't fought the best brand of competition yet, though, especially as a professional. But he is handling all of his opponents in a way that suggests he might be ready for the step up against the Yins King. SD definitely seemed to do his best work at range, especially with his kicks. And he has knockouts by the head kick. He's got a liver kick knockout, and he's got a leg kick knockout as well. But we also saw his grappling game on full display in the Aaron Highbaugh fight, where he won all 3 rounds easily by stopping takedowns, getting takedowns of his own, and dominating long stretches of the fight on the ground. He got to Aaron's back. He attempted submissions, and he was landing ground and pound the whole time. And the conditioning looked really good for Sedriques. We also saw he's got a cheeky guillotine that he showed off on DWCS against Panas, and that was an absolutely brilliant performance. SD was at a 4-inch reach disadvantage there. This dude, Panas, that he fought on DWCS had an 83-inch reach. For the middleweight division, that's just freakish. That's like Cannetti and Chekwu reach. So he was at that reach disadvantage. He lands a nice kick at range, and then he blasts inside with a huge left hook, and that lands. And when he landed that, he used that to close the distance. He got a body lock takedown, which is what you want to do against a kickboxer that's got a 4-inch reach advantage over you. He immediately passed to mount after he got that body lock takedown. And then he locked up the power ghillie to finish the fight 47 seconds in. So, I mean, just an absolutely clean, beautiful Dana White Contender Series performance by Sedriques Dumas. This kid's one hell of a prospect, everyone. And I'm really looking forward to seeing him make his octagon debut. But he's going to be making his octagon debut against the big Yins, Josh Fremd. And that is not an easy test. Josh is another huge middleweight. He's 6'4", and he's got a 76-inch reach. He's got 13 professional fights. He's got a 9-4 pro record with 7 of those wins coming inside the distance. He's got 3 submissions, and he's got 4 knockouts. He's 0-2 thus far in the UFC, as he lost on short notice to Anthony Hernandez, and he got subbed via guillotine versus Tresean Gore early in the 2nd round. Josh is a well-rounded fighter, training out of Factory X under Mark Montoya. Josh has got crisp, powerful boxing. He's got nasty low leg kicks, and he's got really powerful knees and elbows in the clinch. And he's got a high school wrestling background that allows him to mix in some takedowns and win minutes on the ground as well. Fremd has got some really nasty knockouts to his credit. Against Lamar Gossi in LFA, it sounded like Josh broke Lamar's skull with knees in the clinch after Gossi stood back up after being taken down. Against Antonio Jones in LFA, Fremd hurt Jones bad with an elbow in the clinch, then separated, then he landed a straight right that sent Jones to the land of wind and ghosts. Shout out Liam Picks Fights for bringing up that beautiful reference. And we got Bruno Oliveira fight in LFA where Josh landed a counter left hook and ground and pound right after he dropped that put Bruno Oliveira completely out. So just know, if you bet against the big Yins, that he can melt dudes with just one touch at any point of the fight, and he's dangerous literally everywhere the fight goes. The UFC losses against Hernandez and Gore are both understandable, as taking a short notice fight against Anthony Hernandez is almost an impossible fight to win. And he simply got caught versus Gore in a fight that he was winning with really crisp stand-up at distance. So he just kind of got caught in a guillotine by a guy he probably didn't think had a submission game. Dumas is a prospect with a very bright future, but this Josh Fremd fight is going to be a really stiff test for him. So in summary, we got special delivery. Dumas is 1.5 years younger. He's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage here. He's never tasted defeat as a pro, and he's got a fantastic variety of kicks at range that utilize his long but muscular frame. He's shown great conditioning and great poise in his fights thus far, and he's an opportunistic finisher wherever the fight goes. Josh is 2 inches taller, and he's got the overall and the UFC experience advantages. He's the better wrestler from what I've seen on tape and has the more technical stand-up, and he also uses his length very well. He's shown the ability to offensively wrestle more than Dumas has on tape, and Josh has definitely fought the better brand of competition up to this point in his career. This is going to be a back and forth, close, exciting fight. Both guys have power, conditioning, and the ability to be able to finish fights, but Josh has got more experience. He's fought the better brand of competition, and he's training at a better camp at elevation, and he's shown a similar skill set to Sedriques. So I'm going to pick Josh Fremd to win this fight by decision. I think it's a decent plus money number for you're getting the more experienced fighter. You're getting a guy that's got a ton of power on the feet and multiple paths to victory. And, Dumas making his debut, I don't really worry about Sedriques kind of having an adrenaline dump or the moment being too big for him. This kid does not look like he looks like when he's walking to the cage, like he's like waiting in line at the DMV. This guy looks like he's got ice water in his veins, and I don't picture the moment being too big for Sedriques. So this is a hell of a fight, you guys. The big Yins versus special delivery. I'm picking Fremd here, and I might get to a bet on Fremd, but man, I'm very impressed from what I've seen on tape from Sedriques Dumas, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him in the cage, because if he goes in there and he treats Josh the Big Yins Fremd like he's treated all of his other opponents, it's going to open a lot of eyes, and I don't think we'll ever really see Sedriques Dumas for a very long time at less than minus 200 on the money line if he handles business in this fight. But that is a big if, and I'm going the other way. I'm going with the big Yins, Josh Fremd, by decision. All right. The next fight that we're going to break down, Raphael Assuncao, the ageless wonder at plus 113, coming back against dangerous Davey Grant, minus 133. The fight doesn't go to decision at plus money here at plus 125. All right. Let's get these stats up here. And let's talk about this fight. This is one of the only ones I didn't write up because I have very little interest in this fight. I think the stylistic matchup means so much here. Davey Grant is a well-rounded mixed martial artist. He's got a very good ground game, very good submission game. But lately, in the second half of his career, we've seen Davey Grant kind of be a shit-eating wild man and just throw with power and stand in the pocket and trust his chin, try to bring a war to his opponent, a bloody war, and try to outlast them. And it's been fun to watch, man. Davey Grant's fights have been kick-ass lately. The fight against Vera was awesome. The fight against Giannis was awesome. He carved through Luis Smolka really quick. Beat Jonathan the Dragon Martinez via KO. So definitely seen a lot of good things here recently from Davey Grant. Now, Raphael Assuncao was on a 4-fight losing streak, coming in against Victor Henry, who looked like the return of Jesus Christ against Hani Barcelos. And then we see Assuncao come in and do what he does every goddamn fight, which is to hypnotize his opponent, get them to lower the volume that they throw, land counter strikes, mix in the wrestling attempts to win minutes, and just win a very low volume, very boring fight. And he did it like the masterclass that he's always done it. Raphael Assuncao is one of the worst DraftKings players that you could ever have on your team in MMA. The guy will score less in wins than some fighters score in losses. He does nothing. He waits to counter. He's very proficient at it, and his best attribute is his defense, plain and simple. He keeps fights at striking range. He spends 82% of the 174 minutes that he spends in the UFC cage at distance striking range. And while he's at distance striking range, he shows a 66.6% striking defense, and he lands more than he absorbs, but he throws less. And, he's even been knocked down more than he's been knocked down 3 times, but only knocked his opponents down 1 time. So it's when you look at the numbers, you kind of say to yourself, how the fuck is Raphael Assuncao winning fights? He's 9-5 in the UFC, and prior to that 4-fight losing streak, this guy was 8-1. He was just putting together win after win after win, where he lands 45 significant strikes and his opponents land 44. And he usually gets like 1 takedown in about a minute and a half of control time in one of those 3 rounds that wins it for him. And that's what he does. So I guess the most stylistically important question that we have to ask ourselves about this fight is Davey Grant going to show Raphael Assuncao any respect? Because if he does show Raphael Assuncao respect, he's going to wind up getting hypnotized into fighting at Raphael's pace, and Raphael is an absolute master of winning minutes at that pace. What he's not an absolute master at is being in wars and coming out the other side the winning fighter. Raphael Assuncao has been finished in 5 of his 9 career losses and in 3 of his 5 UFC losses. So if you just say, fuck Raphael Assuncao's counter-striking, fuck Raphael Assuncao's wrestling, where he accrues less than 10% control time over a large sample size. How about fuck Raphael Assuncao, fuck this dude, I'm going to march him down, I'm going to get in his face, I'm going to throw way more volume than him, and I'm going to hurt him, I'm going to make him respect me, I'm going to turn him into a wrestler, and then I'm going to walk him straight into a knee and send him to the land of wind and ghosts. That's what Davey Grant needs to do. But Davey Grant's only showed 65% takedown defense. He's been controlled for 16% of his UFC career, and he's been subbed in 3 of his 5 UFC losses and in 4 of his 6 career losses. So one thing Raphael Assuncao has always had is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He came out of the womb with it. And he's had it for his entire life, and he can get submissions. He's attempting 0.17 submission attempts per 15 minutes, so about 1/6. And that's 1/6 of 1. Yeah, so he's attempted a few, and he's gotten 1 career win by submission in the UFC. But overall, he's gotten a lot. He's gotten about 10 UFC or career wins by submission. So I think that there could be spots where Raphael could maybe even lock something up on the ground here. But I really do think that Davey Grant should win this fight. I think that he should be moving forward. He should be throwing with power. He should know that Raphael Assuncao is not finishing him on the feet. He just needs to have the confidence to not worry about the counter striking, to not show Raphael Assuncao the respect that he deserves, because if he does show him that respect, he's going to get sucked into a low-volume staring match, and that's where Raphael does his best work and does his best minute winning. So I'm going to pick Davey Grant to win this fight. I think that he's going to bring the chaos here. I think he's going to bring a war, and if he does that, he takes Raphael out of what he does best, which is being a very meticulous minute winner at distance with a fantastic shell and a great defensive philosophy. I think Davey Grant's going to test that defense, bring the chaos here, and I think he's going to get a knockout in the second round. So the pick is going to be Dangerous Davey Grant by second round knockout over the ageless one, Raphael Assuncao. Because that's one thing that Victor Henry doesn't have at this level, which is power in his hands. He's an attritional striker. He breaks you down. He uses pace and volume as a weapon. But Assuncao was so accurate with his counter striking that he wound up, kind of getting Henry on his heels a little bit and then was able to wrestle him successfully. I don't think he's going to be able to wrestle Davey Grant as successfully as he did Victor Henry. And I think that he's got a lot more to worry about from the offensive game of Davey Grant with that one punch knockout power that Davey does have at this point in his career. So, yeah, we're going to pick Grant. We're going to pick him to win inside the distance by knockout. That brings us to the next fight, which is going to be Karl Williams. I want to call him Karl the Truth Williams so bad, but I know that's not his nickname. And that nickname was already taken by somebody named Karl Williams, who was a boxer many years ago. But we got Karl Williams, a minus 205 favorite right now on Bet Online, going up against Lukasz, Brzeski, plus 175. The fight doesn't go to decision at minus 125 here. So let me get the stats up on the screen. And we don't have many of them, but I watched the tape on these guys. So let's first start talking about Karl Williams. I was absolutely blown away by the tape on Karl Williams. This dude's wrestling is incredible. And he's got the cardio to push a wrestling heavy pace for the full 15 minutes. He was a multi-sport athlete growing up from the U.S. Virgin Islands. He moved to the U.S. And he found himself getting into a lot of fights due to his accent and being new to the school. And the fights that he got into caught the attention of the school's wrestling coach, and the rest is history. So Karl fought his entire pro career at 205 pounds until he took the Jimmy Lawson fight on short notice to get the Dana White Contender Series opportunity, and that fight was up at heavyweight. Jimmy Lawson was a Penn State wrestler who was around a minus 300 favorite when the line opened, and he closed around minus 250. Williams in that fight was 3 of 3 on his takedowns. He amassed almost 11 minutes of control time versus the heavyweight Penn State wrestling standout. And he only absorbed one significant strike over 15 minutes in that fight. An absolute clean sheet against a stud wrestler on short notice up a weight class. But it doesn't just stop with that performance. The rest of this film on this kid shows the same story we saw versus Lawson. Dominant wrestling that he commits to for the full 15 minutes. He never gets tired, and he out-wrestles wrestlers. It's not just like some bum that he's taking down over and over again. He's out there, against a Penn State stud in Jimmy Lawson, up a weight class on short notice, and throwing him around like a rag doll. He fought Black Santa, Miles Amos, who's got an extensive wrestling background, and he ragdolled Miles Amos for the entire fight. In the Amos fight and the Wright fights, he absorbed nearly no damage at all at any point in either one of those fights. Versus Wright, he basically had a body lock on the poor kid for like 14 out of the 15 minutes. His only pro loss came against Jason Butcher in B2 Fighting Series, where Jason, who has a 100% career finish rate, caught him in a triangle. Jason Butcher has got 8 career submissions, and 6 of them are by triangle. So Karl got caught there. But outside of that, this dude is absolutely mowing through dudes and dominating fights from pillar to post. Williams even showed off a snappy jab versus Marina that looked like he had made big strides in his striking. Definitely very impressed with everything I saw from Karl Williams on tape. And I can't wait to see this kid make his debut on Saturday. And he's going to be doing it against Lukasz Brzeski, who's a 30-year-old fighter who's been a pro for almost 10 years now. He's got an 8-2-1 pro record with 7 of his 8 wins coming inside the distance. He's got 5 knockouts and 2 submissions. He's looked good so far in his DWCS fight and his UFC debut. He got a 3rd-round submission win over Dylan Potter, even though Dylan didn't tap. It was a bad stoppage by Mark Smith, but still, Lukasz got 2 takedowns in that fight. He got almost 8 minutes of control time, and Dylan Potter really didn't do much. I mean, even if Mark Smith didn't accidentally stop that fight for no reason, it would have been a clean three rounds to nothing victory there for Lukasz Brzeski. In his UFC debut against Martin Budaj, we saw a stand-up striking battle where Lukasz outlanded Martin 118 to 66 on significant strikes, but still found a way to lose that fight on the judges' scorecards. Lukasz stays very busy on the feet. He throws leg kicks to the calf especially, jabs and front kicks to the body, and he's got nice 1-2s down the middle. He's very hittable, though, as we've seen him pretty much everyone he's stood against land nice shots on him. But Lukasz does his best work when he's winning the grappling exchanges. But the Mihail Kita fight was very concerning. Kita was almost 40 years old at the time, and he managed to win a lot of the minutes on the ground versus Lukasz. And even though he gassed out early in the fight, and even though Kita really isn't a heavyweight, he's a light heavyweight, Kita out-grappled Lukasz Brzeski for long periods of that fight. And so it was not a good look there. Lukasz looks very bad optically, as he tends to breathe with his mouth wide open and do it sometimes even early in fights. Kind of reminds me of Dricus du Plessis in that he looks tired a lot of the time, but even when he looks tired, he always manages to fight through it and keep pressing and keep throwing a lot of volume. And you ask yourself, man, how does this guy keep it up when he's tired? But I think he just breathes through his mouth more than he should. So Lukasz is solid everywhere, but he's great nowhere. You know, you do see him use his wrestling and grappling in some fights. You see him landing big shots on the feet in some fights, and you see him just outlasting dudes in other fights. But yeah, there's no part of Lukasz's game other than the volume that he throws for a heavyweight, which is pretty impressive, where you say like, oh yeah, I mean, this kid's got a really bright future. So yeah, it's hard to know where this kid's going to be at. He was suspended for using PEDs after the Potter fight for 1 year, and we saw a noticeable difference in his physique between the Potter and the Budaj fights. So it's going to be interesting to see how his wrestling defense holds up against a guy like Williams. But Karl is the better minute winner with his wrestling and his defense. He's definitely the better athlete, and he's much better conditioning, and he's got the faster hands, too, on the feet. Lukasz, though, is 2 years younger than Karl. He's got 4 more professional fights, and he's got 25 more minutes in the pro cage, and he's got more UFC experience as Karl is making his UFC debut in this fight. Lukasz should be the better minute winner at distance with his volume and pace. Sorry. My cat's meowing, and when she starts screaming, it makes the dog howl. So it looks like they've quieted down. All right. So now I can start talking in a more normal voice here. I was blown away by how good of a wrestler Williams was on tape and how effectively he used it to not only win minutes, but stay safe by not absorbing any strikes and making his fights wrestling matches. Karl has absolutely bodied way better wrestlers than Lukasz Brzeski, and I see this fight being no different. I'm picking Karl Williams to win by a unanimous decision, but a third-round finish would not surprise me either if he breaks Lukasz with his wrestling, top pressure, and ground and pound. Because the way that he's so dominant and the way that he makes people wear his weight and he gets to that body lock and seems to be incredibly strong for his size. The way he was thrown around Lawson was hilarious. And then the fight against Kyle Wright, like I said, dude, he had this dude in a body lock for the entire fight. And I'm not joking when I say that like halfway through the second round, I think Karl Williams had probably gotten about 13 to 15 takedowns. He just got to his back, picked him up, threw him down, kept trying to get a hook in, wasn't able to get the hook in, but never relinquished the body lock and just kept mat returning the dude over and over and over and over again. Actually, Karl Williams in that fight, with about 45 seconds left in the fight, just let his opponent up, and the crowd started going nuts because it was the first distance striking exchange that they had seen. And Karl pops him a couple of times, and then with 10 seconds left in the fight, he gets another takedown, and the crowd boos. But, man, if you had a ticket, if you were holding the Karl Williams ticket, you would have been standing up and cheering at that absolute clean sheet that he put up against this kid, Kyle Wright. But He's a very, very impressive wrestler, and he's going to go to it over and over again, and he's not going to get tired doing it. And I think that he either finishes Brzeski in the third round by breaking him or gets this win by decision. But I'm going to pick Karl Williams to win by third round knockout. I think he breaks him. I think he gets to a dominant position late in the fight and finishes it with ground and pound. Karl Williams, stand up. ATT Atlanta, stand up. Really looking forward to seeing this kid make his debut. All right. The next fight that we are going to talk about. Oh, beauty. We got Vitor Petrino going up against Anton, the Pleasure Man, Turkalj. Petrino minus 103. The Pleasure Man, the favorite at minus 117. And the fight doesn't go to decision, juiced up at minus 230 here. All right. Let me just check something here, you guys. Okay. My guy, Alan Hayes, with the $5 donation. I appreciate you, Alan. Thank you for helping keep the lights on here in your Uncle Weezy studio. Much love to you, brother. Let's see here. And we already got the Silky B donation. So, all right, fantastic. Let's get back to work here, you guys. And Brzeski is a bad nail, says Mushroom MMA. Well, it's going to be a rough night for him if he's a bad nail against Karl Williams. But let's start talking about this Petrino-Turkalj matchup. Vitor Petrino, we'll start with him. He's a 25-year-old Brazilian prospect with an undefeated 7-0 pro record. 6 of those 7 wins coming by way of knockout. He's not huge for the division at 6'2" with a 77-inch reach, but he does have big power in his hands. His pro career spans almost 4 years, and he's had a couple fights against decent competition. So far, fighting guys like Everton Hulk and Rodolfo Bellato twice. And Gadzhimurad Antigulov, he beat as well. But he also crushed some complete cans as well. Vitor does his best work on the feet where he throws straight punches, 1-2s down the pipe, and he mixes in some hooks and uppercuts as well. He's pretty low volume, though, and he doesn't throw many kicks. I have seen him look good in the clinch and mix in some takedowns of his own, but he can be taken down and controlled, which is bad news against a relentless grappler like Turkalj. In Petrino's win against Everton Hulk, he won the first 2 rounds, but he lost the last, and he had a point taken for illegal shots to the back of the head. So it was a curious decision that he got that win, because I clearly saw him lose one of those 3 rounds, and with him getting the point deduction, it probably should have been called a draw, but it was not. But yeah, he did show great power in his 2 knockout wins over Bellato. So if we go, I don't want to do that, but yeah, if you look at Petrino's career, his first 2 career fights were against Everton Hulk and this guy Bellato that he had fought on Contender Series later on. And those 2 guys happen to be the best guys that he fought. After those 2 fights, he crushed cans for like 4 fights, complete bums. Dudes with like 0-6 records, a 1-16 record, if I remember correctly. William Tellez was a 1-16 record. Fabio Barbosa Gois is a bum. Kike Sosa is a bum. And then he fought Antigulov, who's probably a bum. And then he beat Bellato for the second time in his career because his professional debut was against Bellato. So, you know, this is going to be a step up in competition for Vitor Petrino. And we're going to see. Now, I haven't seen the Antigulov fight, so I don't know if Gadzhimurad tried to wrestle him or not. But, I mean, Gadzhimurad's got about 90 seconds worth of cardio. So even if he did get a takedown and early in the fight, if he didn't finish it immediately, it's, you know, Antigulov's going to run out of gas. Now, Turkalj has fought some good guys in Acacio dos Santos, obviously Jailton Almeida, Konstantin Soldatov, Ibo Aslan. He's fought good guys. And then in addition to that, you know, Anton's experienced. He's well-rounded, and he's only 26 years old. So he's 8-1 as a pro, with his only loss coming on short notice versus Jailton Almeida. And Anton was an 11-3 as an amateur, so he's more experienced than his pro record shows. Anton's got a funky striking style on the feet. He's pretty easy to hit, but his unorthodox striking style sometimes catches people flat-footed, and he does have power when he lands. He'll throw flying knees and spinning back fists, and he does like to throw in combination and uses striking to set up his clinch and his takedown entries. On Dana White Contender Series versus Dos Santos, Anton got 11 takedowns on 16 attempts, and he amassed almost 12 minutes of control time using a leg lace and continually trying to get to his opponent's back. He lost the majority of the striking exchanges on the feet, but didn't spend enough time there for it to really matter much. Prior to that fight, Anton had finished all of his pro fights, 2 by submission and 5 by knockout, and his average fight time before Dana White Contender Series was just over 3 minutes per fight. So he has shown the ability to win moments and minutes with his well-rounded game. Anton's a good grappler, and he's always looking to get to his opponent's back when he gets fights into the clinch and on the ground. And I like that because it shows he has a nose to finish fights. While defensively flawed on the feet for sure, he has shown an excellent chin, and he has counted on it. He's counted on it in the past, especially in the Ibo Aslan fight, where Anton lost the first round clearly and absorbed several big shots. Excuse me. Ring-a-ding-ding. My guy B with the $1 donation from Canada, and he's asking, can we see if DFS by the numbers videos are displaying without borders? I have no idea. DFS by the numbers could probably tell you that, but I have no idea. And hang on just a second. There we go. Had to wet my whistle a little bit. So, let me get back to my notes. So in summary here, Vitor is 1 year younger. He's been a little more active as a pro, and although he's a low-volume striker, he should be the more powerful striker who throws the straighter, more powerful punches. Anton is more experienced both as a pro and an amateur, and he's definitely shown to be the better wrestler and more dangerous grappler, as we've seen Petrino give up minutes to both Rodolfo and Everton on the ground and in the grappling exchanges. Both guys have power on the feet, and both guys have fought a decent level of competition thus far. I think Anton has more ways to win this fight, and I feel outside of Vitor landing a big shot, Anton will be a notch better with his wrestling and grappling, and he also has a chance to land a big shot on the feet as well because he's shown a ton of power in his own right. Outside of the Jailton fight, neither guy has ever been finished. So I'm going to pick Anton Turkalj to win this fight by decision. Let me get that up there. I just think he's got more ways to win this, and I think that Vitor Petrino's path is to land a big shot, but I think Anton's got a really good chin. And it's interesting to note that Turkalj never wanted to be a fighter, but being such a handsome kid with such a beautiful head of hair, he was stealing so many dudes' girlfriends. They would have these, jilted boyfriends trying to kick his ass all the time. And because of how much fucking this guy was doing, and don't get it twisted, everybody, Anton Turkalj fucks, like daily. This dude is fucking constantly. So, he really had to learn how to fight because of how much he was fucking and how many other women, how many other dudes' women he was fucking. So this guy is getting the job done. He's learned how to do this correctly. He's got a 14-fight amateur career where he's 11-3. He's got a professional career where his only loss came to Jailton Almeida. He's got the chin. He's got the power on the feet. And he's got the wrestling game. Just way more ways to win this fight. So I'm looking for the Anton, the Pleasure Man Turkalj to win this one by decision. All right. Next fight, you guys. Said Nurmagomedov, a minus 255 favorite. It's going to be squaring off against Jonathan the Dragon Martinez, plus 215. And we've got the fight doesn't go to decision at plus 100 for this fight. So let's get the stats up on the screen and let's talk about this fight. We're going to start talking about Said Nurmagomedov after I get a little more beverage in me here. Okay. Said is a 30-year-old fighter out of Dagestan who's 5'8" with a 70-inch reach. He's got 19 professional fights. He's He's got a 17-2 pro record with 175 minutes in the pro cage. He's finished 9 of his 17 wins inside the distance, 5 submissions and 4 knockouts, and he's never been finished as a pro. Saeed has done a nice job at distance striking range, as he's showing a positive 1.56 distance strike differential per minute, and he's throwing 3.27 more distance strike attempts per minute spent at distance than his opponents do. So he throws and lands more than his opponents. Saeed has 1 knockdown, and he's absorbed 0 at the UFC level. Where Saeed has given up minutes on the aggregate is in the grappling exchanges, as he's only completed 2 of 21 career UFC takedown attempts, while showing only 63% takedown defense in his own right. So he's getting out-controlled 25.7% to 5.55%, losing over 82% of the control time positions that he's been in. Saeed has shown excellent finishing instincts thus far in the UFC, as he's finished 4 of his 6 UFC wins with 2 knockouts and 2 submissions. So he's definitely fought the superior strength of schedule, according to my metric. Jonathan Martinez is still only 28 years old, though. He trains out of Factory X, and he's got a 17-4 pro record in 21 pro fights, with 10 of those wins coming inside the distance. He's got 2 submissions and 8 knockouts on his record. John is a southpaw striker who has done good work at distance like Saeed has, as he's got a positive 0.07 distance striking differential with 45% accuracy and a 62% striking defense. He's also flashed a lot of power, landing 7 knockdowns in 11 UFC fights, so Martinez can win some moments on the feet for sure. He's landing a knockdown on 1.21% of the distance strikes that he's landing, and he's also finished 3 of his 8 UFC wins via KO, so he's got some finishing potential. His KO wins in the UFC were over Pingyang Liu, Frankie Saenz, and Cub Swanson. John has also been efficient in the grappling exchanges, winning 62% of the control time positions he's been in, despite his opponent shooting for 27 takedowns, while Martinez has only shot for 11. So he's out-controlling his opponents at a 1.63 to 1 ratio, but his opponents have attempted 27 takedowns, and Jonathan Martinez has only attempted 11. So Jonathan Martinez, high percentage on his takedowns, solid takedown defense, and an excellent get-up game. Jonathan Martinez is still young and improving, and he's coming off a great performance against a legend in Cub Swanson, and he's currently on a 4-fight winning streak, just like Saeed Nurmagomedov is. But Saeed has the better UFC finish rate. He's never been finished before, and he's showing better minute-winning potential at distance with his ability to outland and outvolume his opponents. Saeed is also a more dangerous submission grappler, and he's known for having a really nasty power guillotine, which we saw him get against Cody Stamann and against Saidyokub Kakhramonov. And then we also got to talk about Saeed, that he's beaten and fought the better level of UFC competition thus far. Now, Jonathan Martinez is 2 years younger. He's the southpaw in this matchup, and he's got 2 more pro fights and 60 more minutes in the pro cage, despite being a pro for 4.5 years less than Saeed Nurmagomedov. So John has been the far busier professional fighter. John also has the UFC experience edge with 4 more fights and 90 more minutes in the UFC cage. Martinez has definitely flashed more power at the UFC level, as he's landed 7 knockdowns in 11 fights, and his efficiency in the grappling exchanges has really been far superior. I like Saeed to win this fight by decision, but minus 250 on the money line is way too wide in my opinion. Jonathan Martinez by decision is plus 375 on Bet365 right now, and I think that that's a great way to play this fight and get Martinez by his best win condition, as we've never seen Saeed Nurmagomedov been finished or knocked out, obviously, as a professional. But yeah, I mean, the pick is going to be Saeed Nurmagomedov, but I have no idea why this line is minus 250. I mean, Saeed's striking is solid, but it's not really that much better than Jonathan Martinez's, and Martinez has got his own little Nice little striking differential there, landing 4.97 and only absorbing 4.15. 62% striking defense compared to 63.5 for Nurmagomedov, and he's got more power on the feet. So, but I think that Saeed will be the more willing wrestler here, and I think his wrestling numbers are a little bit underrated at this level, and I think he can potentially get some takedowns here and work that submission game a little bit. But I think that this fight's going to play out very close. I'm picking Saeed Nurmagomedov to win it by decision, but I am not betting the minus 250 money line on him. And I might even get to a Jonathan the Dragon Martinez by decision line at plus 350 or better. All right, we've got 4 more fights to break down, you guys. The next one that we're going to look at, Ricardo Ramos at minus 350 going up against Austin Lingo at plus 285. Fight doesn't go to decision for this fight, sitting at minus 130. All right. So there's the stats up on the screen for you guys. So let's talk about Ricardo Ramos first. He's still only 27 years old, is Ramos. And at the tender young age of 27, he has a lot of pro MMA experience. 20 pro fights, a 16-4 pro record with 11 wins coming inside the distance, 4 knockouts, and 7 submissions. Ramos has spent 50% of his pro career fighting at the UFC level, and he's got a 7-3 record, and he's finished 3 of those 7 wins and been finished in 2 of 3 UFC losses. He's got an impressive 4-1 record in UFC decisions. Ramos isn't showing great distance striking metrics, as he's got a negative 0.73 distance striking differential, and he throws 0.54 less distance strike attempts per minute than his opponents do. That being said, Ramos does have power, especially when he lands his spinning back elbow that he's known for. Ramos has 3 UFC knockdowns and 2 wins by knockout. Those wins came over Ayman Zahabi and Danny Chavez, and both of those knockouts were via that spinning back elbow that we were talking about. Ramos is active trying to get the fight to the ground, as he's attempted 29 takedowns in 10 fights, and he's getting those takedowns at a 59% clip. However, he isn't winning many minutes on the ground, as he tends to be more of a submission over position type of grappler, and his efficiency in the grappling is just okay, as Ramos has 17 UFC takedowns, and he's given up only 6, but he still wins only 52% of the control time positions he's in, despite the fact that he has 12 more takedowns than his opponents do. Ramos is 5-0 in the UFC when he gets a takedown. So I would expect him to try to implement the wrestling and grappling here against a powerful and explosive striker like Austin Lingo. Ramos has fought guys in the UFC with good records. As we see, his overall strength to schedule ratio is 1.45, and Ricardo is still only 27. So we could still see him continue to improve from here and grow his overall MMA game. Now we're going to talk about Austin Lingo. Lingo is coming off a 1.5-year layoff, but he is a young fighter at only 28 years of age, and he's got a 9-1 pro record. Austin has 5 finishes in those 9 wins. 2 of them are by submission, and 3 of them are by KO. And all 5 of those finishes happen in the first half of the first round, and 4 of those 5 finishes happen in 35 seconds or less. So obviously, Austin is very dangerous early in fights, and he throws with a ton of power. Austin is landing a positive 0.47 more distance strikes per minute than his opponents do, and he's throwing 0.43 more distance strike attempts than his opponents do. And he's landed 2 knockdowns in 3 UFC fights, so he's flashed that power that we saw from him pre-UFC. He's on a 2-fight winning streak right now, and his last performance versus Luis Saldana, who's also an excellent striker, was impressive. About a third of Austin's UFC cage time has taken place in control time positions, and Austin has won about 45% of them. He's showing 80% takedown defense, but he was grappled a lot by Zalal, where he gave up 6 takedowns and about 6.5 minutes of control time in that fight. But outside of that, he's done very well stopping takedowns, as he stopped 22 of the last 23 takedown attempts against him in his last 2 fights. So it looks like people are seeing what I see here, in that they just don't want to be on the feet with Austin Lingo because he looks to melt dudes. And they kind of figure, hey, if I can grapple this guy and take him out of what he does best, which is land with power on the feet, then I'm going to be a lot safer. And that's why Austin Lingo has faced 35 takedown attempts in only 3 UFC fights and 45 minutes in the UFC cage. It's because people are terrified to stand with this dude. So in summary, Ricardo Ramos is the younger fighter. He's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage here. He's the far more experienced fighter, both as a professional and at the UFC level. He's finished 3 of his 7 UFC wins, while Austin Lingo has not finished any of his UFC wins. Ramos is going to be the better and more willing grappler here as he gets his takedowns at a 58.62% clip, and then he's averaging 2.58 takedowns per 15 minutes. And he's also fought the better brand of competition here. But on the feet, while this is there, Austin Lingo is going to be landing big shots, and we can look for him to maybe get a knockdown or two and potentially, win moments of this fight on the feet. But outside of that happening, it's hard to find a path here for Lingo because Ramos is younger. He's got the 2-inch reach advantage. He's more experienced. He's the much better grappler, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And he's the much more willing wrestler. And, he's just fought better guys than Lingo. So, and since Lingo has never been finished in his 10-fight pro career, I'm going to be picking Ricardo Ramos to win this fight by decision. So there we go. Ricardo Ramos winning by decision is the pick for this fight. And we got, Ramos is a big favorite at minus 350. So it's kind of hard to get to that money line. But if you got it in at minus 250, it's looking a lot better. The next fight that we're going to talk about is going to be what was supposed to be the main event a couple of weeks ago, Nikita Krylov versus Ryan Spann. We've already talked about this fight. Krylov is sitting about where he was when this fight went off 2 weeks ago. Krylov minus 170, Spann plus 145. Fight doesn't go to decision, juice to the tits at minus 400 here. So they're saying that this fight finishes inside the distance about 8 out of 10 times. Krylov and Spann is a very, very exciting matchup between two guys at 205 pounds who finish fights. Nikita Krylov's got 29 professional wins. 27 of them are inside the distance. Ryan Spann has got an 85% finish rate in 21 wins. So 18 of his 21 wins coming inside the distance. Ryan Spann's got crazy power numbers. He lands 4 distance strikes per minute, and he's landing a knockdown on 4.42% of the distance strikes that he lands. Dude's got canned hams for fists, and when he lands on dudes, they go to sleep. And Krylov's got really great power in his own right. He's landed 5 knockdowns in 17 UFC fights, while Spann has landed 5 knockdowns in 9 UFC fights. So definitely Spann, landing these knockdowns at a much higher clip, but Krylov is also dangerous on the feet. And both of these guys have got great submission games. Ryan Spann, 12 or 13 career wins by submission. Nikita Krylov, 15 career wins by submission. Ryan Spann in his 7 UFC wins, I show one of those must be a submission, is right, but he's got at least 3 submission wins out of those 7. And Nikita Krylov in his 10 UFC wins has got 4 wins by submission. So both of these guys are definitely dangerous in the submission grappling realm. And but Krylov is the better wrestler for sure, attempting 48 takedowns in 17 fights, getting 2.11 takedowns per 15 minutes. And Krylov's fights take place in control time positions about 68% of the time, while for Spann, it's about 43 to 44% of the time. So Krylov's just used to being on the ground more and in the clinch more than Spann is. And I think that that's what he's going to do. I think he's going to come out wrestling here. It's a 3-round fight. We've seen Nikita Krylov just recently in the Volkan Ozdemir fight go to the wrestling early and often and use it to put his opponent in a place where they're not being able to do what they do best. Volkan Ozdemir hits people hard on the feet. Nikita Krylov wrestled the shit out of him. And that's what Ryan Spann does. You know, he's definitely very powerful on the feet, but you have to be very careful how you enter on those takedowns, because this dude is looking to snatch up your neck. And if he gets his arms around it, chances are you're not going to breathe for a minute. So this is a very exciting fight. I think this fight finishes under 1.5 rounds, but I think that Nikita Krylov just has more ways to win this fight. He's the more active grappler. He's the more experienced fighter. He's the better finisher. And he's definitely shown that he can be a little more durable over a long period of time than Ryan Spann can. As Ryan Spann has been finished in all of his UFC losses, while Krylov has been finished in 5 of 7 losses. So both of these guys lose inside the distance. 7 of their 9 combined UFC losses have been inside the distance. And these guys are finishers at the UFC level as well. So, this fight is probably going to finish under 1.5 rounds. And I think that that's the safest way to play this fight. But both of these guys are so live that I just don't think I'm going to be getting on the money line side here at all. And the pick is going to be violence. But my official prediction for this fight is going to be Nikita Krylov to win by second round submission. Spann does tend to find the door if things don't go well for him early. And I think that this might be a fight where things don't go great for him early and Krylov finds a submission after 6 or 7 minutes into the fight. All right. And I believe we've only got 2 more fights to break down, you guys. The co-main event, a heavyweight scrap, which is going to be a ton of fun. We've got 2 big boys in the cage. Alexander Volkov, 6'7", 80-inch reach, squaring off against Alexander Romanov, 6'2", 75-inch reach. This is going to be a very fun fight. So the line here is Volkov plus 129, Romanov just a little bit better than minus 150, and the fight doesn't go to decision up at minus 290. So let's start talking about Romanov here. Romanov is a smaller yet very powerful heavyweight wrestler. He's got a 16-1 pro record. He's coming off the first loss of his pro career by majority decision to Marcin Tybura. Alex has only been fighting for 6 years, but he already has 17 pro fights and almost 100 minutes in the pro cage, and he's got 6 UFC fights and a 5-1 record over 50 minutes in the UFC cage. Alex has finished 93.75% of his pro wins inside the distance, 9 submissions, 6 knockouts. And Romanov is a front-loaded wrestler with fantastic takedowns, great top control, vicious King Kong-esque ground and pound, and a sneaky submission game. He's finished 4 of his 5 UFC wins inside the distance, 1 knockout, and 3 submissions. And his only decision to win was a very close fight against Juan Espino that he probably should have lost, but the fight was stopped in the 3rd round because Romanov was unable to continue after being kneed in the sack. On the feet, Alex doesn't do much besides throwing a big rear leg body kick, and he primarily uses his striking to set up his entries on his takedowns. Alex is so short and compact that when he gets his opponent's back flat to the mat, he can really wear on them with ground and pound and those forearm choke attempts that really only work when your opponent's back is flat on the mat. Romanov is doing phenomenal work on the ground thus far. He's averaging 5.18 takedowns per 15 minutes, 1.15 submission attempts per 15 minutes, and he's averaging 60% control time while only yielding 9% control time. He's winning 87% of those control time positions he's been in thus far, and that's been in 52 minutes in the UFC cage. Thus far, Romanov is in control time positions 69% of his fights. So dominating the wrestling and control time positions in that fashion is huge in a matchup versus a guy who only wins 22% of the control time positions he's been in, and his fights take place there over 30% of the 175 minutes Volkov has been in the cage. In Romanov's 5 UFC wins, he's averaging over 70% control time on 16 of 23 takedown attempts. The only reason he didn't finish the job versus Tybura was because the fight took place at elevation in Salt Lake City, and Romanov had never fought at elevation before, so he gassed out and he was unable to wrestle after 10-8ing Tybura in the first. Now, Volkov, you got an ultra veteran here. 45 professional fights, 13 UFC fights, 175 minutes in the UFC cage, 404 minutes in the pro cage. He's got a 9-4 UFC record, and he's finished 5 of those 9 wins by knockout. Alexander Volkov does fantastic work at distance, everybody. He lands 6.34 distance strikes per minute spent at distance and only absorbs 3.51. So he's out-voluming his opponents. He's outlanding his opponents. He's landed 3 knockdowns in 13 fights, and he's got 5 knockouts in 13 UFC fights. But Volkov has got 73% takedown defense. And like I mentioned, he spends about 30% of his fights in control time positions, but he's winning about 22% of those control time positions. If we look here at Volkov's UFC career, and you look at the names that he's faced, he's fought some wrestlers. He's fought Timothy Johnson. He's fought Roy Nelson. He's fought Fabricio Verdum. He's fought Curtis Blades. Alistair Overeem will wrestle sometimes. Martin Tybura is definitely a grappler. But and then Tom Aspinall is a good grappler, but he definitely prefers to strike. And you see he's getting a lot of wins here. But the problem is that he lost 2 rounds to Timothy Johnson. He definitely didn't deserve to win that fight, and it's because Johnson got a bunch of control time off of him. If we scroll over here, we can see the takedown numbers. You know, Johnson was 1 of 2 on that's what Volkov was. Johnson was 1 of 8 on takedowns, but got 273 seconds of control time. 1 of 8 on takedowns here for Roy Nelson. He still got almost a round's worth of control time. 3 of 9 on takedowns for Fabricio Verdum and got 400 seconds of control time. And he won the first 2 rounds of that fight by getting takedowns and control time. Johnson won the first 2 rounds of that fight. Roy Nelson won the first round of the Volkov fight. And then we saw Curtis Blades, 14 of 25 on takedowns, almost 1,200 seconds of control time out of 1,500. And in the first 3 rounds of that fight, I mean, Blades controlled out of those first 15 minutes, I would say probably 13 minutes of that fight. And then we saw Tybura go 0 of 16 on his takedown attempts, but Tybura is a terrible wrestler. He's more of an opportunistic submission guy, ground and pound guy after he catches kicks, or, you know, he's kind of like a timing guy, but he, on Fight Island, went for 16 takedowns and got none of them, but he's still got 121 seconds of control time. And then Tom Aspinall takes him down twice and submits him immediately. When this guy's fighting grapplers, he's losing minutes to those grapplers. And these are not guys that have 70% control time like Alexander Romanov. These are not guys, even like, you know, Blades is great at getting fights to the ground, but he's not great at finishing them down there. Alexander Romanov does way better work on top and gets a lot more ground and pound and goes for a lot more submission attempts. So this is definitely a situation where I don't like the stylistic matchup for Alexander Volkov in this fight. Alexander Romanov commits to the wrestling. As we can see here on the stats, you know, this is a guy who's getting 60% control time over a 99-minute sample size. Hang on just a second, everybody. Okay, sorry about that. But yeah, this is not a good stylistic matchup. Volkov gives up a ton of control time to grapplers, and they're not as good of wrestlers as Alexander Romanov, with the exception of Curtis Blades. And like I said, if we were to go to UFC stats here, and we go to the Austin Lingo here, and then we can go to UFC Fight Night Jan versus Dvalishvili. I just want to show you this. Romanov. No, not Romanov. God damn it. Volkov. In the Blades fight, per round, Curtis Blades, 4 minutes and 52 seconds of control time in round 1. 4 minutes and 2 seconds of control time in round 2. 3:53 of control time in round 3. And he's getting 5 of 6 takedowns, 3 of 4, and then 1 of 4. So, I mean, if Blades is doing that to him, it's absolutely possible that Alexander Romanov does the exact same thing to him. And I'm predicting that that's what's going to happen here. Look, Volkov's more experienced. He's taller. He's longer. He's the much better stand-up fighter. But if we look at how effective Volkov is with his wrestling defense and how effective Alexander Romanov is with his wrestling offense, with his submission game, and with his ground and pound, this stylistic matchup is a perfect matchup for Alexander Romanov. Now, of course, Alexander Volkov has got a path here, and that's stopping takedowns, getting Romanov tired, and then, landing big shots late in the fight to knock him out. But this fight isn't taking place at altitude. It's taking place in Las Vegas in a desert at sea level. You're not going to see Romanov get tired like he did in the last fight against Tabura in Salt Lake City at 6,000 feet altitude. So I love this spot for Alexander Romanov. And I think Alexander Romanov probably finishes this dude in the second round by ground and pound. I think he's just going to break him with the wrestling. And I think it might even be in the first. But I'm picking Romanov to win this one by second round knockout. And I have got a bet on him as well, which I will talk about when we get to the track bet section of the fight here. And that brings us to the last fight of the night, the main event, 5 rounds. Petr Yan, straight out of Siberia, squaring up against Merab Dvalishvili, straight out of Georgia. Petr Yan is minus 260 right now. Merab Dvalishvili plus 220, and the fight doesn't go to decision, sitting at plus 155. All right. Let's see. And all right. Let's go. I don't have notes on this fight, so let's just talk about it. Petr Yan, 2 years younger. It's going to be Dvalishvili, who's got a 1-inch reach advantage. Yan switches stances on the feet. These guys have got very similar experience numbers. Yan, 1 more fight. Yan, about 48 more minutes in the cage. And he's got 1 more UFC level fight and about 25, 30 more minutes in the UFC cage in comparison to Dvalishvili. Yan, very well-rounded. Great grappling, great wrestling, fantastic boxing. Really a great minute winner at range. Good power on the feet. Really gets better as the fight goes on and really finds the weaknesses in his opponent's game at striking range and exploits those weaknesses as the fight goes on. Lands with greater and greater power, starts to mix in the grappling, and he's got vicious ground and pound when he gets on top. Merab Dvalishvili is a conditioning monster. The guy's lungs they go past his balls. I mean, I think his lungs go all the way down to his knees. And he's just able to push a pace. And that pace is his weapon. It's his way to win fights. Continuously wrestle over and over and over and over and over again. And just do it at a pace that your opponent can't handle. Maybe you break them late. Maybe you don't. But you stay safe. You absorb very few significant strikes. And you win decisions. Merab Dvalishvili has 8 UFC wins. Only 1 of them is a finish. It was against Marlon Moraes, who is a 1-round fighter. Other than that, Merab is going to win minutes with his control time positions, as we see that Merab wins 89.45% of the control time positions that he's in. He's gotten 63 takedowns on 155 attempts and only given up 3. So he's got 60 more takedowns than his opponents do. But Petr Yan's shown 90% takedown defense, and he keeps his fights standing 75% of the time, while Merab Dvalishvili's fights are only standing 52% of the time. So that is going to be the battle in this fight. Where does the fight take place? Does it take place at distance striking range, or does it take place at grappling range? And in my opinion, the reason that Jan is such a big favorite is if this fight takes place in grappling range, it's probably about 50-50. Jan is a great wrestler. He's got great defensive wrestling. He trains with great wrestlers, and he's got a great ground game in his own right. So he's a very, very effective grappler. But if this fight takes place on the feet, Merab Dvalishvili really doesn't have much of a chance. So that's why Jan is the favorite here. Jan has got the much better power numbers on the feet. Jan has got the much better takedown defense. Jan gets takedowns actually at a higher clip, 56% in comparison to 40% for Merab. And he's got better takedown defense than Merab. But Merab is winning 90% of the control time positions that he's in, while Peter Yan is winning 63%. But really the only guys that have controlled Peter Yan on the ground have only been, Aljamain Sterling. As we see Sterling here and Sterling here. Now, Sterling didn't get any control time the first fight. But the second fight, well, he did get 205 seconds. I'm sorry, he got one takedown on 17 attempts. And then he got two takedowns on 22 attempts. But those three takedowns were over 700 seconds of control time that Aljamain Sterling got against Peter Yan. But Aljamain Sterling is a different kind of grappler than what Dvalishvili is. Dvalishvili is a wrestler who uses pace. He gets mat returns. He wrestles constantly. He tries to get to your back, but he doesn't get submissions, and he doesn't have a submission game that's UFC level that people are going to worry about. And now Sterling is exactly the opposite. Sterling has a hard time getting takedowns. He's an okay wrestler. But man, when he gets into those grappling positions, whether he's on his back or whether he's on top, he's constantly working for submissions, working to get to your back. And if he gets a sweep, if he gets to your back, there's a very high likelihood that the fight is going to finish. So the question is going to be, how does Peter Yan deal with, this particular type of grappling attack? Because he handled it, the Sterling fight great the first time, but the second time he lost 2 rounds by letting Sterling get takedowns and get to his back. But he clearly won the other 3 rounds on the feet. So if he can outstrike Aljamain Sterling on the feet, he can easily outstrike Merab Dvalishvili on the feet, who just doesn't have much in terms of boxing. So it's gonna remain to be seen, how long Peter Yan can keep this fight standing, and will Peter Yan try to mix in some takedowns of his own? Because if he can get Merab Dvalishvili down and put him on his back, you're going to see a different level of ground and pound, from Peter Yan than you will from Merab Dvalishvili. So I just think that there's more paths to victory here for Peter Yan. And I think that Peter Yan is going to get a late finish in this fight, because the one question that we don't have answered is, we know that Merab Dvalishvili can wrestle for 15 minutes. Can he do it for 25 minutes against somebody that's got as good a takedown defense and as good of a get-up game as Peter Yan does? And I think that the answer to that is going to be no. And I think that we're going to see Peter Yan start to land big shots exactly like Marlon Moraes landed big shots against Dvalishvili recently when they fought. And in addition to that, we've seen good wrestlers already beat Merab Dvalishvili. Ricky Simon beat him. Frankie Saenz beat him. Okay, so if Peter Yan wants to get in some wrestling of his own, he could put this fight into a place where Merab might not be comfortable. So, I do like this spot. It's a very interesting spot, but I have got to favor the 10 knockdowns of Peter Yan. I've got to favor the positive striking differential of Peter Yan here. I've got to favor the 90% takedown defense of Peter Yan, and I've got to favor the wins over guys with a 58-40 pro record as compared to the 44-36 pro record of the guys that Merab Dvalishvili has beaten. You look at those 5 names: Gustavo Lopez, John Dodson, Cody Stamen, Marlon Moraes, and then he beat Jose Aldo and retired him. But Peter Yan destroyed Jose Aldo. And then he destroys Aljamain Sterling, lands an illegal knee. He beats Corey Sandhagen over 5 rounds. He loses a split decision to Aljamain Sterling, but he clearly won 3 rounds in that fight. I could have seen it being called a draw, but how anybody with an IQ over 60 came to the conclusion that Aljamain Sterling won round 1 of that fight, I'll never know. And then he lost a really close decision to Sean O'Malley. But this is a different stylistic matchup than all of those fights, and there's still a lot of unanswered questions about how Petr Yan is going to how he's going to fare in a fight where he probably sees 25 to 30 takedown attempts over the course of this fight. I mean, Merab Dvalishvili has spent 144 minutes in the UFC cage, and he's got 155 takedown attempts. So he's averaging more than 1 takedown attempt for every minute that he's in the cage. So how is Petr Yan going to do in a 5-round fight when he sees 25 to 30 takedown attempts? I think he's going to do well, and I think that he's going to put up a level of resistance that we could finally see Merab Dvalishvili tired for the first time in his UFC career, and then we could see Petr Yan either beat him up on the feet or get a takedown of his own and get some ground and pound and get a late finish. So for the last prediction of the night, 2 hours and 1 minute into the show, we're going to go with no mercy, Petr Yan to win by 5th round knockout over Merab the Machine Dvalishvili. Love this fight. Love this card. And I love all of you guys for hanging out here on Just the Tip with Uncle Weezy. We got 67 of you live right now, waiting to hear what the tracked bets are going to be for this week so far. And I've got them up here on the screen, and I'll even put them down here on the ticker for you guys. We've got a 5-unit max bet on the Karl Williams money line that I made today at -200. Now, I missed the line movement by a mile on this one, but I was just so blown away by what I saw from Karl Williams on tape that I had to pull the trigger, and I feel like this line's going to keep going and that Williams might even close around -250 here. The guy's wrestling is phenomenal. His conditioning is phenomenal. His game planning is phenomenal, and his ability to absorb absolutely no damage over long stretches of fights is something that I haven't seen in a very long time. So I am a big fan of Karl Williams, and I laid the hammer down 5 units to win 2.5 at -200. In addition to that, I've got a 2.5 unit bet on the Alexander Romanov money line over Alexander Volkov. Got it at -122. Bet that for 2.5 units. And I've also got a 1-unit parlay on the Karl Williams and Bruno Silva money lines, -195, -205 earlier done today on DraftKings at +125 for 1 unit. Also, on probability today, some over-under lines that stood out, which I have not bet yet. The Nam Silva over 1.5 at around -170. I like both of their durabilities, and I think that this fight will go over 1.5 rounds. We've got the probability parlay, which we gave out earlier today on the MMA Engine. That is sitting at -106 right now. And what that one is the Lipski Aldrich over 1.5 rounds parlayed with the Brzeski Williams over 1.5 rounds. That comes out to -106. That's the probability parlay for this week. I like the Ramos Lingo fight goes to decision at +100. That's a trifecta bet on my prop template. And I also like the Romanov Volkov fight goes to decision at +230. That's a trifecta bet on my prop template. And then I've also got the Yan Dvalishvili fight doesn't go to decision at +155. But what I like even more than that, because I don't see Merab having much finishing equity, is a Petr Yan inside the distance bet at something like +250. So those are the track bets that we have so far. So let's get you guys out of here and finish with everybody's favorite YouTube segment of the week. It's Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. So what's it going to be? Who's going to go out there and look dominant? Who's going to go out there and put up a clean sheet against their opponent and perhaps even finish the fight in violent fashion? Well, it shouldn't be much of a secret today. I've got a 5-unit bet on Karl Williams coming in here on his UFC debut. This guy out wrestles wrestlers. He takes no damage. He's got fantastic conditioning, and he's got a style that makes him very difficult to deal with, especially somebody with the poor conditioning, the not great defensive wrestling, and inactive submission game of Lukasz Brzeski. So this week's Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week is a 5-unit money line bet and a 1-unit parlay on Karl Williams money line, ATT Atlanta stand up, US Virgin Islands stand up. You've got your first UFC fighter. He's going to be making his debut on Saturday, and he is going to be shaving the ass of Lukasz Brzeski. We did it. 2 hours and 5 minutes, almost 70 of you guys hanging out live in here. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for hanging out here. Hit that thumbs up button on your way out. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done that already. And make sure you check out the Patreon, patreon.com/Uncle Weezy. $5 a month for the basic stats, $20 a month for the prop template. And it's a great way to support the work that I put out for you guys every single week here for free on YouTube. Appreciate all of you guys for hanging out. Let's stack cash tickets like flapjacks for UFC Las Vegas. And I will be back tomorrow night, 6 o'clock Central Time on Pub Sports Radio to do the DFS show with DFS by the Numbers, Gordo Gambles, and Monk Maddox. And I will be back tomorrow night right here on Uncle Weezy's YouTube channel to do Ask Weezy, where you can ask me any questions that you have about the prop template, the stats this week, any of the fighters, or any of the matchups on UFC Las Vegas cards so that we can all find ways to stack cash tickets like flapjacks together. God bless each and every one of you guys, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Take it easy, and let's have a great week.